Dolores Huerta Get to know the voice of the migrant workers. Table of contents. Chapter 1. Si se puede. Chapter 2. Early life. Chapter 3. Work before school. Chapter 4. The real work begins. Chapter 5. The active activist. Si se puede. Dolores Huerta had long been a voice for farm workers. She wanted them to work together and form a union. She wanted their voice to be heard. Large farms in Central California relied on thousands of farm workers to grow and harvest their crops. The food they grew was sold around the country, but the workers were treated poorly. They worked from sun up to sundown, without shade, cold drinking water, or rest breaks. There were not bathrooms nearby, and despite working so hard, workers in the Southwest United States only earned between 70 cents and $1.65 an hour. It was May 1972. Dolores and her colleague Cesar Chavez had traveled to Arizona to speak with politicians about a recent bill that had just been passed. In it, farm workers will no longer have the right to strike and boycott. Their voice will be crushed. Dolores and Cesar will work together for more than 30 years. Governor Jack Williams refused to see them. As far as I am concerned, those people don't exist, he said, but local union leaders, they meet with Dolores and Cesar. Dolores stand in front of the flag representing the United Farm Workers Union. Dolores and Cesar co-founded the group. The motto, Viva la Causa, meant long live the cause. The union's leaders explained that the companies that owned the farms were very powerful. They had connections with politicians, police officers, and judges who would quickly side with them. Fighting them will never work. No, no se puede. They said, no, it can be done. Dolores stood. No, she said, in Arizona, si se puede. Yes, we can. Si se puede became the rally cry of farm workers movement in Arizona. Since that day, activists around the country have answered that call. Did you know that became the slogan of our campaign in Arizona and now is the slogan for immigrants' rights movement? We can do it. I can do it. Si se puede. By Dolores Huerta. Early life. Dolores Clara Fernandez was born on April 10, 1930, in Downson, New Mexico. Her parents, Juan Fernandez and Alicia Chavez, divorced when she was young. Alicia Dolores and Dolores' brother moved to Stockton, California. Dolores was always talkative and persuasive. Her grandfather, who helped raise Dolores, called her siete lenguas, or 7 tongues, because she talked so much. Although she didn't see her father often, his actions influenced her early on. He was a farm worker and miner. He was also an activist. He was a member of the miners' union in New Mexico. The mine owners blacklisted him because of his active participation in the union. In 1938, he was elected to the New Mexico state legislature. He used his position to fight for workers' rights. The mining community of Downson, New Mexico, in 1950s, the mine was closed shortly after and the town was abandoned. Enemies in high places. Juan was a well-respected member of New Mexico legislature. He was expelled before his term was up because he had an argument with an appointed New Mexico farm owner. The owner employed a lot of farm workers and had a lot of influence. He will later become a congressman. Did you know Dolores is 5th-generation American? Her great-grandfather fought in Civil War in 1861 through 1865. Alicia ran a restaurant during the day and worked in a cannery at night. She later bought and ran a hotel. Dolores and her siblings helped their mother by cleaning and doing the laundry. Many of the hotel's patrons were low-wage workers. Alicia would often let them stay for free because she knew they were struggling to get by. Alicia encouraged Dolores to try new things. My mother was always pushing me to get involved in all these youth activities, Dolores said. Dolores took piano and violin lessons. She studied ballet, tap, and folklorico traditional Mexican dance. She joined her church youth group and corps. and she was an active Girl Scout. Dolores' community was made up of diverse groups of people, including Chinese, Filipino, African Americans, and Hispanic people. Her troop presented that Dolores was a Girl Scout from age 8 to age 18. Today, the Girl Scout of America offer the Dolores Huerta Girl Scout patch. Scouts must learn about Dolores and give a presentation about her life and her work. Dolores stayed active, joining many school clubs at Stockton High School. During this time, she began to notice that non-white people were treated badly. Sometimes her friends will be bothered, especially when they gather in mixed groups. Dolores created a safe space for those friends to meet at a family friend's store. She wanted them to be able to get together without being harassed. Dolores graduated from Stockton High School in 1947. Dolores also became aware of how little support Hispanic and African American students received. Many became frustrated and dropped out of school. The ones who stayed were discouraged from taking classes that would prepare them for college. She experienced that frustration herself when one of her teachers accused her of cheating on a test. He refused to believe she could write well. Chapter 3. Working Before School. After high school, Dolores attended college in Stockton. She wanted to be a teacher. She also married Ralph Head and had 2 daughters. The marriage did not last long. Dolores began teaching elementary school in California in the early 1950s. Many of her students were the children of farm workers. They came to school hungry, dirty, and worn-out clothes. Sometimes they didn't stay for the whole year. Their parents had to move to find work in other cities or states. Having such a disrupted home life made learning very difficult. Between 1942 and 1964, more than 4.6 million individuals' Bracero contracts were signed. The Bracero program. During World War II, from 1939 to 1945, Mexico and the United States started a Bracero program. Mexican men were invited to sign short-term contracts to work in the United States, mostly for agricultural jobs. The program was meant to be temporary, to fill labor shortage caused by American men going off to war, but it lasted much longer than that. Employers were supposed to pay fair wages and provide good housing and food, insurance, and transportation back to Mexico. They were also not supposed to be able to work as strike breakers, but often these rules were ignored. The growers increased their profit while ignoring strikers and keep their labor costs as low as possible. Dolores tried to get food vouchers for her students so they could eat. She tried to get clothing vouchers so they could have decent shoes, but the principal didn't believe that students deserved help. Dolores knew that wasn't true. She had been around farm workers all her life. When I saw people in their home, they had dirty floors, and the furniture was orange crate and cardboard boxes. People were so incredibly poor and they were working so hard. You saw how hard they were working, and yet they were not getting paid anything. She decided she needed to help the parents to help the children. Farm labor laws do not always protect agricultural workers. For example, overtime pay, minimum wage, and health and disability insurance are not always guaranteed. Workers also may face consequences for joining a union. Working in the fields. Migrant workers still must follow the crops to find work. One week they may pick cotton in Texas. The next day will travel to Indiana to harvest tomatoes. Another week may find them in California picking grapes. The work is often done in the hot sun with no shade. They work 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Children work in the fields too. Some are as young as 7. In 2017, experts estimate that about 500,000 farm workers were under 18 years old. Chapter 4. The real work begins. In 1955, 25 years old, Dolores joined the Community Service Organization, CSO. CSO was a civil rights organization dedicated to fight discrimination and police abuse. It also encouraged people to vote. Dolores ran CSO's civics and educational programs. During this time, she learned valuable lessons about community organizing. Founding members of the CSO in the 1950s, Cesar Chavez is second from the right. Organizing farm workers was not one of the group's main goals, but Dolores soon met National Staff Director Cesar Chavez. the son of migrant workers. Cesar had been community organizer with the group for years. His job had led him to speak to Latin Americans, including farm workers around California. He knew the troubles they faced in the fields. In 1962, Cesar had asked group leaders to let him organize a labor union. They turned him down. Work first. Dolores married fellow activist Ventura Huerta in the early 1950s. They have 5 children together. Some believe they divorced because of Ventura's thought Dolores spent too much time with CSO and not enough time at home. We witnessed all the adversity, challenges, and just plain hate our mother faced, and I will think, when will she give it up and say, enough? Well, she has never given up and she continues to be strong for all people, her daughter Angela has said. Cesar and Dolores left CSO and co-founded the National Farm Worker Association, NFWA, in 1962. Dolores spent her time lobbying in Sacramento. She wanted to change laws to protect farm workers. One law, Aid for Dependent Families, made disability insurance for farm workers possible. She also helped get the minimum wage for field workers raised to $1.60 an hour. While Dolores worked behind the scenes, Cesar became the face of the organization. He traveled around California speaking to farm workers about how joining together in a union will help everyone. He made everyone feel that they were important and that their thoughts and opinions mattered. By 1970s, the union had 50,000 members. Dolores had to fight against sexism too. During union meetings, she will mark every time someone made a sexist comment. At the end of the meeting, she will announce how many had been made. Did you know Cesar and Dolores didn't always seem eye to eye, but they respect each other, even when they disagree. I told him, I feel so bad when I fight with you. He said, don't even stop. Don't even stop fighting with me. You're the one that really helps me think. On September 8, 1965, members of the Agricultural Workers Organization Committee, AWOC, went on strike. Several thousand workers across at least 20 different grape farms walked off the job, made up of Filipino Americans, Mexican, and black workers, and led by Larry Itzlang. They were fighting for better pay. Cesar and Dolores had been planning a strike too, but had wanted to wait until their organization was large. Still, they knew joining Larry will help both groups. They set the stage for everything. Cesar's son Paul said later, nobody showed the kind of conviction this man did. Do you know that NFWA and AWOC merged in 1966 to become the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee, UFWOC? In 1970, the name was changed to the United Farm Workers of America. On September 16, NFWA voted to join the strike. Dolores organized 5,000 workers to participate. Other workers and volunteers picketed. The strike lasted for years. When the union signed a contract with the grape growers in 1970, Dolores was the main force behind negotiations. Union members finally had better pay, job benefits, and work protections. Dolores far right, and Cesar at a strike meeting in 1966. By the end of the summer, workers from more than 30 farms had joined them. Chapter 5. The Active Activists. In 1973, Dolores' rallying cry of "Si se puede" led to another boycott. By this time, the 3-year contract UFW signed in 1970 had expired. Growers used this time to sign sweetheart deals with another union. These deals often favored the growers and gave the workers little in return. Dolores' group was not a part of this union, but the deal were signed as if they were. Unionized grapes and lettuce workers held strikes across California. Thousands of nonviolent strikers were attacked or arrested. 2 were killed. Cesar was arrested, but Dolores and her supporters spread the word. By 1975, 17 million Americans were boycotting non-union grapes, lettuce, and Galen brand wine, which was made in California. The Agricultural Labor Relations Act was passed that year. It gave farm workers in California the right to assemble, organize, and negotiate union contracts with their employers. Dolores continued her work for human rights. In 1988, she attended a peaceful protest in San Francisco. that 1,000 protesters objected to Vice President George H.W. Bush's opposition to the boycott. Dolores was handing out leaflets on UFW's Great Boycott. A policeman swung his baton at Dolores. The 5-foot-tall, 58-year-old grandmother was rushed to the hospital. She had several broken ribs and ruptured limbs which had to be removed. Dolores was arrested more than 20 times in her life. Dolores has said that she wasn't meant to be a housewife. She was meant to be an activist. She began relationships with Cesar's brother Richard in the late 1960s or early 1970s. It lasted more than 40 years. Together they had 4 children. Sometimes she was called out for being more an activist than a mother. She attended rallies and protested while pregnant. She changed diapers and nursed babies between meetings. Her children have said that when they were young, they did not always know why she put her work first, but as adults, they understand. We soon realized that my mother didn't really belong to us, her son Emilio said. Dolores and 3 of her 7 daughters in the mid-1970s. Dangerous fields. Dolores always felt that human rights were a family matter. After all, families spent hours together working in the fields. When they protested together. The pesticides used by the growers affected families too. Exposure to the chemicals in pesticides can cause nausea, breathing problems, and other long-term illness such as lung cancer. They can also cause birth defects. The danger was everyone's. Cesar died in 1993. Instead of taking over the union, Dolores, in her early 60s at the time, decided to step down. She spent time with her family. She also continued her humanitarian work, traveling the country with a group called the Feminist Majorities Feminization of the Power. The group goal is to work towards women's equality, both on the street and in politics. Dolores worked to get more Latinos elected into office. Dolores won the Puffin National Prize for Creative Citizenship in 2002. She used the $100,000 award money to fund the Dolores Huerta Foundation. The foundation works to engage and develop natural leaders, teaching them how to speak up through community organizing, leadership, and civil engagement. The foundation is located in Bakersfield, California, where Dolores grew up. President Barack Obama awarded Dolores the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012. This is the highest award a civilian can be given. Obama had used Dolores' slogan for his presidential campaign. Yes, we can. In 2017, a documentary titled Dolores was released. Its intent was to give Dolores equal credit with Cesar Chavez for the formation and growth of the UFW. Dolores, at 88 years old, spent 2018 knocking on doors and registering voters. That year, Congress had 42 Latino members, a record number. Sí se puede.